Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we're playing some Blue-Red Storm, which is a new list I've seen pop up in one or two 5.0 leagues. I thought I'd give it a whirl because it's quite different and showcases a new card in Elemental Eruption. So this is a card that for 6 mana makes you a 4/4 dragon with flying and prowess, and it has Storm. So quite often this is going to make us a few dragons, and that should be enough to win a game. In order to power this out, we've got ourselves some Seething Songs. We've got some Rite of Flames, and we've got Jeska's Will. If you're unfamiliar with Jeska's Will, you can choose one of these two modes. You can either add red for each card in target opponent's hand, or you can exile top 3 cards of your library and play them till end of turn. So you can use it as a sort of draw spell or as a ramp spell. We've got some Lotus Petals and some Chrome Moxes to power out some extra mana to make sure we can do this. And we're running blue, so we have cantrips. So this is Brainstorm, Ponder, and Preordain, with a cheeky little Lorien Revealed in there too. So this is going to give us a lot of selection to try and find the pieces we need so we can go off, and we're supporting it with 6 counter spells, which is a nice thing to have when you're playing a Storm deck because you don't really care about many things from your opponent. So being able to just answer the 1 or 2 things you do care about is really clutch. Then we've got 4 One Rings, so we can just play this early and just draw some cards, and this will win us the game at some point. That's what this card usually does if it goes unchecked for a few turns. And that's pretty much the main deck. We've got Ancient Tombs to help power things out. We've got 2 islands and a mountain. We've got 1 Thundering Falls and 2 Volks, and the rest is just fetches to go and find them. And that's pretty much where we are. Sideboard-wise, we've got a Meltdown for artifact decks that can be jamming us up with things like, not so much Chalice, but Chalice on 1 is going to be a little bit annoying, but we can take things out of that as well as just, you know, decks that are trying to race us with a bunch of constructs or whatever. Got a bit of graveyard hate, a bit more graveyard hate. We've got some removal spells for some pesky creatures, things like Gaddock Teague or whatever. We have Pyroblasts to help force our thing through and also blow up some other scary things that might be in existence. A nice catch or bounce spell, a couple more counters that we can use to protect our combo turn, and then a Force of Negation, which we're going to bring in against decks that have prison pieces that we need to count on their turn, or decks that are going to be faster than us. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Once upon a time, I myself played Blue-Red Storm at Pro Tour Philadelphia. It was a very different sort of deck, but it was, you know, we had a bunch of cantrips in that deck, and instead of playing Elemental Eruption, we were trying to do big Empty the Warrens turns. But aside from that, there's, you know, some similarities here because a lot of these cards were legal and modern at the first Modern Pro Tour. So it was kind of nice playing that. That was one I selected to play. But if you watch the channel, you know I'm not really an expert on Storm. But I think I can probably handle this one more or less. So remember to like and subscribe, and let's see how I do. All right, we've got some cantrips to try and find something. We've got the Seething Song, which will get us to the correct mana we need once upon a time. So we might be up against a fair matchup. Wish Reclaimer. So it's probably somewhere along the lines of Cradle Control or Fiend Artisan Elves or whatever you'd like to call it. There is the Reclaimer. So we're just going to be trying to do our best with the old Ponder thing. Okay, that is part of what we're looking for here. So we're going to go for this Ponder first. Force of Will isn't really what I'm about here. I think we're going to get any order and shuffle. Another land. That's not really what we want to see there. Like, we can make a couple of dragons next turn, but I'd like to make more than a couple. Something like a Brainstorm would be an excellent draw, and we can bin off these lands. Yeah, I think my ideal draw would be a Brainstorm. So we Brainstorm, put away a couple of lands, shuffle, and then Preordain, and then we just have the resources to make a whole bunch of dragons the following turn. The One Ring. We could just jam the One Ring and start drawing cards. But I think our Seething Song is best used for our combo turn. We're going to fetch first because we don't want to put cards at the bottom and then shuffle through our library. I think we just get another island here and get the mountain next turn. This way, if we find another cantrip, we can use that. Right, let's cast a Ponder. Cradle Control decks tend not to run Orcish Bowmasters these days either, so we're relatively safe here. We don't really want these cards. Is any order in a shuffle again? Another Ponder. So we could just jam the One Ring next turn off of an Ancient Tomb. And then hopefully that will give us +3 cards for the turn after, where we can make a whole bunch of elementals and maybe back it up with something like a Force. My opponent's going to be finding some useful resources here. Could be a Gaia's Cradle. That'll be my guess. Unless we are looking at more of like a green-white depths deck rather than splashing white. Okay, yeah, so it is green-white depths. They're just running once upon a time. You don't always see that in their decks. Okay. Green Sun Zenith, X equals 2. Is this going to be Gaddock Teague? It is going to be a Gaddock Teague. Can we beat Gaddock Teague in the main deck? We cannot. We are stone cold to Gaddock Teague. So let's just go again. All right, I think we need some lightning bolts. I think that's a given here. I'm not sure we need Dazes. Our opponent's going to have a bunch of little bits and pieces going on. So I like having the Force of Will here. Maybe just trimming on a cantrip. And that's probably reasonable enough. Do you want one Echoing Truth as well? Just to help out with... Actually, I should check our blue count. 14, 15. That is very low, isn't it? We have just boarded out 4 of these. Don't like going this low on blue cards. We need to have these things. We need to have our win conditions. We need our fast mana. That's kind of what our deck does. We don't have a lot of wiggle room, to be honest. I don't think we can wiggle in any other way here. So I think we're just going in with a very low number for our Force of Will. No Ponder. We do have a removal spell. This Force of Will doesn't really do anything. We can do better turns. I suppose this is probably acceptable. We've got 3 lands here. I don't think we need 3 lands, so we'll put one of them back. So the aim is to do some sort of Brainstorm action. We could go and get a Thundering Falls. That does give us a little bit of problem with trying to shuffle them away. We have a lot of fetch lands in our deck that we can hit. I think it's worth trying to maximize our cards here. Once upon a time for our opponents, we're going to see an Elvish Reclaimer again. The best thing our opponent can do. Scavenging Ooze. Okay, we don't care about that. A Thoughtseize. I would like to get this Brainstorm off. I'm going to get a Volcanic for this. Let's cast this Brainstorm. There's some stuff there, isn't there? So I want this 1 ring in a couple of turns. So next turn we can play the 1 ring, which means we need all of our fast mana. So we're going to put the 1 ring on top, but we're going to bury underneath it. It's probably just a lightning bolt for now. And then we'll see if our opponent wants to take our Force of Will here. I guess we could have forced this, but if they take our fast mana here, right? So they've taken the Brainstorm. That's a-okay with me. Play Chrome Mox, imprint this Force of Will. Let's just get the 1 ring ticking and draw a bunch of cards. They can play Collector Roof. We know the top card of our library is a Lightning Bolt. So our opponent has Thoughtseizes, so we don't want to draw that immediately. Well, I suppose it doesn't matter, right? Because of they can't target us, so we might as well just take this card now. I doubt they're going to have anything that makes each player discard Wasteland. So they can take out something, a Collector Roof. So we have the answer for this, which is what I was getting to earlier. Sure. Kill this guy. Let's draw some more cards. Right, we've got our next answer set up. Let's get a little bit of Surveil action. Elemental Eruption. That is a thing that we want. That's the only way we can actually win the game with our deck. So we do want to keep that around, even though it doesn't look super amazing on this board. It's still fine. Right, we're going to draw some more cards, and then we'll be able to do our thing with it. And we've got an Echoing Truth that we can use against something spooky. Just the Birds of Paradise. We're going to see a Wasteland try and cut us off. Well, he's going to play something like the Ooze here. They are going to play the Ooze. Again, we don't care about that. So now we get to draw a whole lot more cards. Our life total is obviously what our opponent's going to be trying to pressure this matchup. But let's have a look. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we're going to cast this Ponder. Ancient Tomb. Another Ponder. This isn't really getting us where we need to be. Let's go any order and shuffle. We don't have another Surveil land, so I don't really want that right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're 1 off of doing that. We have a Force of Will if we need it, or an Echoing Truth. And then hopefully 4 cards off the top will do enough. Yep, I'm happy to take 2. Are they going to pump it before damage? They can eat their Collector Roof. Yeah, okay, they're going to get the extra 1 point of damage. But next turn we should be able to make some dragons. We're going to draw 5 cards next turn. Paducah Bog. That does nothing for our deck. That's fine too. Take 3 damage here. So our life total is getting a little on the precarious side. Let's draw some more cards. Alright, now we're cooking. Our opponent's got 2 cards in hand, so this is probably not what we want to be. Let me go Rite of Flame first. Then we'll cast this Seething Song. That's 5 mana. This will be 6. So if we play out this Ancient Tomb, we will be losing quite a lot of life doing that. But I think that's still acceptable. We just want to get more friends here. So we'll take 4 next turn. This will be 5, 6. That puts us to 4. This will put us to 3. I think that's acceptable. So if we fire this off, I would like to have a look at the top cards of my library, because we're still going to have enough to Elemental Eruption in a second. And this could give us some more Storm. This Brainstorm is very risky to cast. I think we're just going to enjoy our dragons. 4, 8, 12, 16. And then we can just cast some spells next turn and have enough to win the game with, in theory. We've got plenty of blockers. We've got a Force of Will to protect what we're doing. This will give us the prowess next turn. Obviously, we can draw a bunch of cards with the One Ring. Sure, you can exile some stuff, it doesn't matter. Fiend Artisan. This does nothing on its own. Gaia's Cradle. So I'm expecting something like an Endurance from our opponent here. We do need to win the game this turn due to the One Ring, but we can bounce our own One Ring as well. Let's play this. Prowess triggers. Let's get some more Prowess triggers. They didn't exile our Rite of Flame, so this will give us more mana. Let's cast the One Ring. This gives us protection as well. One. So Force of Will, blue card. Force of Will, blue card. I think I'll cast a Preordain as well. Just to make sure our dragons are as big as possible. I don't think we need this Lotus Petal right now. Seething Song. Alright, we can cast that instant speed if we need more power for some reason. But this is a big chunk. So this is 8 and 8, which is 16. Plus another 8, which is 24. Alright, we got the game. Yep, I don't really think we have any other option with our sideboarding here. I think we just gotta go in and hope we can bolt the right thing at the right time. This hand allows us to make turn 2 dragons. So we go turn 1, Ponder, turn 2, Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal, Seething Song, Elemental Eruption. If we find any additional stuff along the way, then that's great. Forest. This is going to be a Dryad Arbor. This will allow them to cast a Green Sun Zenith for 2 next turn. We do require the Volcanic Island to make this play, so that's what we're going to go and get here. We're looking for things like Lightning Bolt or Force of Will. None of those. Any order, shuffle. Rite of Flame. So play this out, it gives us 2 mana. That's still not enough. So we have the elementals, well, the dragons even, next turn. They have dragon elementals, I guess. But our opponent's going to Green Sun Zenith, most likely for a Collector Roof, because you wouldn't spend your thing that gets you your hate piece here. Although Collector Roof doesn't do it, it's the Gadok Teague that does. Okay. So yeah, so they didn't Gadok Teague here. So we do just get to make our thing. Let's play this one out. I'm not expecting Mindbreak Trap. That would certainly be a sad one. So that's 6 mana. So we can Brainstorm as well, just to get more dragons. I do like these cards I'm seeing. So we can cast this Rite of Flame. We can Lightning Bolt this Fiend Artisan. And we can make many, many dragons. Alright, our opponent scooped into that. We had a lot of dragons. So that's Storm 7. So we're going to have 8 4/4s. Alright, deck felt pretty good. The One Ring does quite a lot of work. But we kind of showcased both ways that this deck wins. Either by leveraging the card advantage from the One Ring until you just have enough to bury your opponent. Or just doing the turn 2, make a whole bunch of stuff and win the game. This would be easier if Namesticker Goblin was still legal. But I'm pretty happy with how that went. Let's go to round 2. We got some cantrips. I think we can keep this one. We've got a plan to work towards. Get the One Ring in play. Tap the One Ring a few times. Win game. A Tundra. So it could be against some kind of slow controller deck. What Tundra Go makes me think. Right, let's crack off this Ponder. Force of Will, Lorien Revealed. These aren't really what I'm after. We're going to go any order. Alright. Seething Song. Like, we could keep the Force of Will to try and fight over resolving our One Ring. But I think we're likely to use our Brainstorm next turn just to keep digging anyway. So I'm not convinced that we want to be using our hand in that fashion. There's Marsh Flats. Okay, so there's no Walker's Bowmasters being threatened, so we can happily Brainstorm here. Bunch of blue spells. That's what I wanted to see. Okay, so let's put these 2 back. Let's drop Misty Rainforest. I'm not going to get red mana until I have to get red mana, I don't think. We're just going to go get an island here and cast a Preordain. This tells our opponent we're on some kind of combo, most likely. Okay, we found the Elemental Eruption and the Force of Will. I want both of these cards. I think we'll put the Elemental on top and then the Force of Will on top. And then draw the Force of Will, just in case we need to fire it off. So we're going to have Force of Will and Daze to protect our thing. But we're not going to make many guys. But we can use this to protect a One Ring turn. And then the One Ring should eventually win us the game, because that's pretty much what the One Ring says on it. So I'm liking our spot. If our opponent plays a Narset here, then we're going to have to fight over it. Scrubland and nothing. So there could be a hard cast Force of Negation over there. I'm going to try this One Ring. I'm prepared to fight tooth and nail over this one. It's the Force of Negation. Sauron's Ransom. Say no to this using our Daze. This might just be trying to find some more cards to pitch from. Or aren't we just in? Alright, let's go wild and start to run some cards. So we know our opponent doesn't have a Force of Will, unless they've got a Narset and they think that's going to be the way they answer this. Our opponent must be on some kind of control-y strategy with like mid to late game cards like Sauron's Ransom. A Chrome Mox. Let's draw some cards. If they've got a Bowmasters here, then they've got a Bowmasters. They did not have it. Okay. What is our plan here? I think we play out the Chrome Mox. We imprint an Elemental Eruption. Then we cast ourselves a Seething Song. And then we'll cast a little guy. Just a few little guys. And hopefully the Force of Will can do enough. Right. And we're going to play this land out so we can use it with the Thundering Falls. We have a Force of Will, but that can't counter a Supreme Verdict. But if they're Supreme Verdicting, then they're not dealing with our One Ring, and that should hopefully be able to draw us into the next round of dragons. Samwise. Yeah, that doesn't really do anything here. It gets them back a Flooded Strand. That's not what the game is about. That might have just been bait to see if we would counterspell it. Swords to Plowshares. Short, we can lose one guy. That gives us another turn of the ring down the line as well. Yep, we can have a Brainstorm. Now we're drawing 4 cards next turn. There's a possibility we can just chain a bunch of cantrips and win. See a Supreme Verdict. A Ponder. That is not a Supreme Verdict. A Prismatic Ending. Okay, we're going to be left with 1 dragon, but that's still a dragon. And we've got the One Ring cooking. Which is how we're going to win this game, most likely. Let's go and find ourselves a Thundering Falls. A Brainstorm is good here because we want to put back some of our cards and shuffle anyway. So we're going to take a little bit of damage from the One Ring. Draw that Brainstorm. Tap this One Ring. Got a Bowmasters here. We can Brainstorm over the top and then try and force it. Let's cast a Brainstorm. Another Force of Will. Oakley dokley. Let's put these 2 back. Force of Will this. Pitching a... Is it Brainstorm or is it Force here? I think it's the Brainstorm. Right, our opponent does have a Force to fire back. Okay, they're going to get some Bowmaster action here, but we're going to make loads of guys this turn. Our opponent is hellbent over there. Now, you can ping us for 3, but that's going to be a lot worse than making a million 4/4s. Alright. Let's cast Seething Song. Cast Seething Song. Let's cast the Eruption. We're making dragons to attack our opponent for 9 here. Our opponent needs to cast a Supreme Verdict next turn. Or they're dead. And if they do cast Supreme Verdict, we get another turn of the One Ring. Alright, that felt pretty sweet. Let's have a look at the sideboard. This one becomes a little bit tricky, I think. So Lightning Bolt is a thing that we can use to deal with Orcish Bowmasters, which is definitely going to be an annoyance for us. I like Flusterstorm to fight over what we're trying to accomplish. And if our opponent's running something like Narset, we're going to want these sorts of spells. I'm not sure we want the Dazes. And we can probably afford to play a slightly slower game. So maybe we're not on the Chrome Moxes here. That still leaves us looking for 3 more cuts. Jeska's Will. That's kind of like our 5th Seething Song, but it's not amazing. We can trim a Preordain. I'm a little bit dubious about trimming more of them with our blue count. Let's just do a little blue count check. 19. I don't really want to go lower than 19. Pyroblasts. Maybe we want these Pyroblasts instead of the Force of Negations. Instead of Force of Negation, we can have a Pyroblast. Maybe we can start trimming on Forces if we're relying on Pyroblast and Fluster. Force is just such a nice catch-all, though. We've got the bolts for the Orcish Bowmasters. Maybe we can trim like a Lotus Petal. The Lotus Petal is such a nice free way of getting ourselves going. I think I'm going to cut 1 fetch land and try that. Is that wild? We've just been drawing a lot of lands in our hand. And we would rather much more have business in our hand than that. Let's try it anyway. 18 land for this sort of deck doesn't seem unreasonable when we got 4 Ancient Tombs and stuff. No starting mana of any colour. Sure, we can keep this one. Probably a Brainstorm goes here because we might just be able to Jeska's Will and go on turn 2. We'll get our Thundering Falls in and try that. Our opponent is Esper, so there's a possibility to have things like Thoughtseize. Just a Ponder, that's fine. So we go Thundering Falls, and then maybe our Jeska's Will makes us lots of mana. But there is a downside where if we try and do that and our opponent has a Force of Will, then us Force of Willing back doesn't really help because it's not going to add very much mana to us. Jeska's Will is not what you would ideally want in this deck, but Namesticker Goblin is no longer a thing we get to play. Is Thundering Falls better than casting this Preordain? If our opponent's running Wasteland, then I think I'd rather have the Thundering Falls. Sorry, have the option for Thundering Falls rather than having to play out the Volcanic Island straight away into a Wasteland. Because we do need blue and red mana for where we're at right now. Oh, our opponent missed on land. That means they probably have quite a bunch of interaction. Let's get this Thundering Falls and see how we fare here. Oh, the Force of a Seething Song. I'll take that. Okay, let's cast... I think we cast the Jeska's Will first. This only needs to make us through 4 mana total. Force of Will. Okay, I think we counter back here. Does it make us 5 mana? It does make us 5 mana. That also builds our Storm nicely for us. This should be a lethal selection of dragons. Alright, opponent. Can you wrath my board with 1 mana? Flown Strand. They can plow to survive for a turn, but they'll be surviving on 1. That'll shut off future fetch lands. But if we cast any spell, they lose. Sure. There we go. Yeah, another match. That felt really good. Again, we've shown the power of both halves of this deck, really. So, thumbs up so far. Let's go to round 3. We're asking a lot from our little Brainstorm here. But if there's any card that you can ask a lot from, it's a Brainstorm, right? And at least we have fetches, so we're not going to be Brainstorm locked. So we can go Thundering Falls into Brainstorm fetch land. And that's quite a decent chunk of selection right there. It's our opponent's turn. Oh, it's Tony, isn't it? So I didn't even realise who we were playing against. So which sort of artifact mana deck is Tony on? It could be anything from Belcher to Coveted Jewel decks to some sort of weird prowess deck. Emery. Sure. I think the plan is to win before this matters. But whether or not that's a thing we actually can do, I'm not sure. Milling the Lava Spur Boots is pretty good because they can play multiple... They can bring this back, then play other copies of Emery. Well, let's just go get our Thundering Falls. I don't think our opponent's going to have Wastelands in their deck either. What do you got for me, deck? A Ponder. I'm not about that. It does see more cards. Maybe that's a bit hasty to throw that one away. But I'm shooting for the moon here. Because we need to win quickly. We don't have the time to be pondering around, I don't think. Okay, so this is 3 mana. 4, 5. So we're still 1 away. I don't think we need an Ancient Tomb here. I think we can put back this mountain. We don't have another Thundering Falls to fetch, but we do have a Force of Will for our opponent's turn. But our opponent probably has Force of Wills in their deck too. So next turn we have 4 mana, 5, 6. So next turn is our go turn. What is this? The Lotus Petal. It's not something I'm that concerned about right now. We have to Force of Will like a 1 ring or something like that. Thoughtcast is pretty strong. Another Lotus Petal. Alright, some amount of baubles being cracked. They saw the Force of Will in our hand. We don't want to draw the top card of our library. We can crack this now and just get another Volk. Let's see what our opponent has to say about our hand here. So we go... This is 2 mana, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's cast Rite of Flame. Cast a Lotus Petal. Let's put some things on the stack. 12 damages, please. That's what this can represent. And then we don't need to cast that many spells. Every spell we cast is a lightning bolt, basically. This is looking like a Meltdown matchup for us as well, which is nice because that's a very powerful sideboard card that we can leverage. Alright, we've got some dragons. So this is 12, 13, 14, 15 damage. So we need to cast 3 spells next turn to try and win the game. So if we can Brainstorm into a thing, we can then cast a spell. Right, and then Force. So we're going to have to use our Force of Will here, I believe. They know we have a Force of Will, so I'm assuming they have one as well. This doesn't feel great if they counter spell back here, though. Yeah. That's what's happening. This gives us less prowess triggers we need to actually win the game. But the One Ring does a pretty good job of winning the game, as we've demonstrated in our first 2 rounds. 2 Brainstorms. So that is lethal next turn, right? So they go to 17, 16, and we have 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah, so we have lethal damage next turn, but our opponent gets a turn with the One Ring. If they find anything like a second One Ring, they can just loop them indefinitely. Or if they find a key of some description, they can start tapping their One Ring, and then they just put us in the dirt, presumably at some point with that amount of card advantage. Okay. Hopefully that Urza Saga doesn't matter. Another copy of the One Ring. I think we Brainstorm on the off chance we can find a Force of Will here. Because they're going to keep the one with more counters on. I see. Is this what we're doing, is it? Yes, they're going to keep the one with counters on just so they can get more cards next turn. This also gives them the ability to constantly loop One Rings. But hopefully we can then try and out One Ring their One Ring, if that makes sense. And get enough stuff to interfere with what our opponent's doing. Oh no, they kept that one. Sure. So they're going to keep that one. And they're just going to draw like one card, lose one life. Or draw 2 cards. Or no, draw 3 cards, lose 1 life every turn. Using the Emery. That should beat us, to be honest. I think the One Ring half of our deck is stronger than the just make our things really quick. In a matchup like this where our opponent's got access to a lot of fast mana and some equally oppressive things they can jam on the board. Yeah, so our opponent's nearly gone through half of their deck already. Okay, so we'll draw a copy of the One Ring. We know there's a One Ring on top of our library and we don't really want that right now. We're looking for Force of Wills and that sort of jazz. Honestly, something like Bonecrusher Giant would be a weird thing that we could play that would actually be good, because the front half of Bonecrusher Giant allows you to prevent damage, to stop damage being prevented this turn, so you just swing through. And it's a reasonable card on its own because it answers creatures. A Force of Will. Do I think there's any point fighting here? I think we're just dead here. Alright, so this is a matchup where the Meltdowns look good, the Pyroblast look good, Soulguide Lantern is reasonable, but I don't think that's how we're trying to fight. The Force of Negation is pretty reasonable. I think Surgical is better because we can just remove all copies of the One Ring rather than trying to just remove the Graveyard and shut off the Emery. These cards also have some utility in them. That's a lot of cards that I'm looking at there, which begs the question, what are we supposed to sideboard here? If we're boarding in Meltdowns, I don't think we want our Chrome Moxes, even though we might need to go a little bit quicker. Let's do a blue card count here as well. How good do I think Daze is against our opponent with a bunch of fast mana? Not very. So we go down to 20 blue cards, which is a lot of blue cards still. But if we want to put these cards in, we're going to have to remove something else. Jeska's Will looks really bad here because our opponent's going to be like pitching their whole hand. Unless they've got the One Ring like looping, then we're already dead anyway. Then we can probably afford to cut 2 Preordains. That still leaves us trying to find 4 spaces. Maybe we don't want the Force of Negation. And maybe we're not going to have the Echoing Truth here. That still leaves us trying to find 2 cuts. We just cut back to so much of these though. Alright, we can get rid of 1 land. I didn't miss that last time around. And what is the other one of we're getting rid of here? Is it one of our Dragon Makers? I think it is. We can't really go lower on the blue cards than that if we're trying to support Force of Will. Ponder into some kind of Force of Will backed One Ring perhaps. Opponent's mulligan to 6. If you ponder on turn 1, it does make our Force of Will less viable as a turn 1 play because we are unlikely to find a blue card. But I think we do need to be pondering and getting something going here. I'm not expecting any land destruction from our opponent or disruption of any way. This gives us a turn 2 One Ring. Now our opponent is a Force of Will deck. We could always slow down and have a turn 3 One Ring. But what are we doing with our second turn? Nothing. Just letting our opponent develop their board more. And that doesn't seem like a great idea. So I think we do need to get the One Ring up and running and start drawing some extra cards. If our opponent fights over it, then that's less blue cards to fuel what their hand is trying to do. Okay. Mox Opal is on. Emery Lurk with the lock. Pyroblast, Accumulated Knowledge. I love seeing the Accumulated Knowledge. Big fan. Okay. Go for Rite of Flame here. We're going to get Force of Will here. Our opponent's on the slow draws with a Pirate Spellbomb that's going to cost them mana to work. Okay, so we're just in with the One Ring. I'll take that. So that's going to draw us the Misty Rainforest. But now we get to be the one with the One Ring advantage. But our opponent is a better One Ring deck because they have all these artifact synergies. They probably have a key that they can untap it with somewhere in their deck. They might have things like Transmute Artifact. We're just using the One Ring as a card that can just do its thing on its own. Whereas our opponent's got extra stuff around it built into their deck to make it even better. Thoughtcast is pretty strong. That recovers them a little bit from the mulligan. They don't have a way of utilising this Emery right now, which is a big win for us. They could have a Pith Needle here, but if they Pith Needle our One Ring, that's not the worst thing in the world. Because they'll be Pith Needle in their own One Ring if they do that. Right, let's draw some cards. Okay, we have a Force of Will here. Let's cast a Rite of Flame. Let's cast a Seething Song. If our opponent fights over this, our Force of Will is going to look real tasty. A Hydro Blast. Do I think our opponent has that? Like, we're definitely doing this because we do need to win the game. Right, let's slam some dragons. I don't believe our opponent is on the Mindbait Trap. Alright, this is a lethal selection of dragons. What is our opponent going to do about it? We should kill them before the Saga pops. If they play a One Ring this turn, then we might just lose the game. Might take a little while, but that's certainly a thing that can happen. Another Urza Saga, 3 cards left in our opponent's hand. They now have mana to cast a One Ring. Grim Monolith. They still have mana to cast a One Ring. Accumulated Knowledge. With 2 floating. That makes it very hard to play the One Ring here. So they've already played their land for turn. A Bauble. A Thoughtcast. Right, we've seen a third of their deck. And we're on turn 3. Lotus Petal. Back up to 2 mana. Just Grim Monolith, the One Ring. They might just be popping this ball to get some information about our deck. Alright. Okay. So now we've got another game to try and win. I like how we've sideboarded. Do we want more counter magic for the One Ring when we're on the draw? Maybe that is true. Maybe we can trim a Preordain here. I don't think we have the time to be doing that much in the way of cantripping, but we still need our high blue card count. So swapping blue card for blue card. But this game is basically about the One Ring and Emery from our opponent's side of the board. And from our side of the board, it's basically just about the One Ring a lot of the time. We're asking our Brainstorm to do a lot, but we have the Emery plan covered. And we have a lot of lands. How do I feel about this? I'm going to reluctantly keep this. I think the Surgical Extraction does a lot of work, and Brainstorm is obviously an incredibly powerful card. We have to wait till turn 2 before we can fully leverage this Brainstorm. But I think that's still an acceptable way to start things off. Okay, our opponent did not have Emery, so we're a little bit punished for keeping this. So we can Thundering Falls, or we can do an emergency Brainstorm. But we have a lot of lands that we're trying to throw back. So I'd like to not have to emergency Brainstorm. Spire of Industry. It's our opponent playing more the control role here. Let's go and get ourselves Thundering Falls. Elemental Eruption. That is the sort of thing I'm looking for. Let's cast a Brainstorm. Okay, I like the Pyroblast a lot here. We're just going to put back a couple of fetches. And the next turn we can try and go for it with Pyroblast up. Accumulated Knowledge, sure. The first one is a cantrip, but after that they start becoming really good value. For a deck that sees so much of its deck, this makes a lot of sense to me. Yep, draw some cards with Accumulated Knowledge. Pretty tasty. What sort of wall of counter magic is our opponent going to try and hit us with? Go Volcanic. Force of Will. Does that change anything here? I think we can wait a turn to see if we get another blue card. Maybe that's slightly cowardly. But our opponent's got 7 cards in hand. They're not playing stuff to the board in their deck that normally plays a bunch of stuff to the board. So that probably means they've got stuff in their hand that they want to be using. Just another Accumulated Knowledge. A Grim Monolith. Now we could fire off this Surgical Extraction and take a look at our opponent's hand. It's not how I wanted to use this Surgical Extraction. But it lets us know if we can beat their hand or not. The One Ring. Yeah, that's a good one. Pirate Spellbomb. Opponent's got 5 cards in hand. Do I think I can beat those 5 cards? A blue card. That's not the one we wanted, was it? Play out this Misty Rainforest. I want to see what our opponent's working with to know if I can beat their hand. This also does generate Storm, so I think it's worth doing. Hit the Accumulated Knowledge here. Force of Will, Force of Will, Force of Negation. We can leave 1 in there because we don't really care if they have a cantrip. That's a bad draw. Just 2 mana, draw 1 card is not a good card. So we know we can beat their hand here. So this is Seething Song. The Paradox Engine could certainly be a problem down the line. Yeah, so our opponent knows that we must have an answer here. So Storm count is 3. So if I cast Elemental Eruption right now, that's not going to be lethal. So our opponent correctly identified that they didn't want to give us extra Storm by countering, and they can use that to protect their turn against whatever nonsense we've got going on. So they need to find a land this turn. We can just fire this off at any target because it's an intervening if clause, so we can target anything. It just doesn't do anything if it's not blue. So that can give us prowess for a turn. I think this is better to fight something like an Emery than it was to just play it out and just build our storm count. But that could be a mistake. We'll find out. Our opponent is certainly the better stormy, mana-y combo deck player than I am. Alright, so they're probably going to re-ring here. Yep. I'm surprised they played that bauble out instead of holding it for the Paradox Engine next turn. But maybe they just have this in the bag already. A Rite of Flame. So we have Force of Will and Pyroblast here. Is that going to be enough to beat our opponent? I am uncertain. It's what we've got though. They can't just keep re-ringing. Let's crack this so they don't Pithing Needle us, because we do need all of our mana if we're trying to accomplish the Force of Will plus Pyroblast. Manifold Key. It's a good one. Right, drawing more cards of the One Ring. Untapping the Grim Monolith. So this is going to be a Paradox Engine turn, which is we're going to have to fight over. If our opponent's got... So the fact that two of these are Force of Negation gives us hope that we can actually resolve our counter magic here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our opponent's got a Force of Will they're going to fire off here. Or have they got a Pyroblast? They do. That's pretty terrible news for us. If they play any spell here, we are dead. Yep, that'll do. Yeah. We just can't get through the One Ring very easily there. And there's a bit of a tension of trying to get your counter magic as well as all your combo side of things. Once again, if we had something that makes damage not be prevented, that could be a way of pushing through the One Ring quite nicely. But are we playing something like Bone Crusher Giant in our deck? Not really convinced. It's fine as a card in the sideboard. Maybe it's better than the Lightning Bolt. Hard to say. Alright, let's go to round 4. Alright, I don't really like this hand. We don't have any cantrips to try and find something else. Okay. I'm down to clown with this one. It won't take much for this hand to get better. I think we keep this and we're just going to have to say goodbye to Force of Will here. Because this gives us red mana, we're not going to get a dual land. We're just going to get an island here and play it safe. Wowzers, trousers. That's a lot of stuff, isn't it? So next turn we could Lotus Petal, Rite of Flame. So this goes 1, 2, 3 mana, 4, 5 mana. This only needs to make us 1 mana, and that's plenty. And then I guess that means we put the Lotus Petal, the next card down, so that we have a free spell that we can play and pump all of our guys. Alright. A timely Force of Will is not going to be our ally. Or we have the Lotus Petal next turn as well, right? Don't we? Yeah, so we have the Lotus Petal. What is our opponent doing? Are they discarding at end of turn? Or are they a second main phase hipster? Alright, second main phase hipster, but they're a combo deck because they're casting a Preordain. That's normally what that means. Filthy combo player. Just like me. Could even be a mirror, who knows? 2 top, 0 bottom. Yikes. I think we're just going to be going for it. This is 3 mana, 4, 5, 6. So we don't even have to cast the Jeska as well. Let's try and add some mana. Right, we should just be in here. Let's make a bunch of lethal dragons and see if our opponent combos us first. Because we still have to turn these little critters sideways to win the game. Alright, our opponent's scooping. Preordain off of a basic island. That doesn't give us the most amount of information, other than combo deck. So our opponent could be playing the mirror. They could be playing some kind of show and tell list, perhaps. I think this is encouraging me to play something like Force of Negation, possibly Flusterstorms. This sort of general ballpark of stuff. I don't like the Dazes on the draw, so they can go. We can probably just trim 1 Preordain. We're keeping the same amount of blue cards total. Maybe Pyroblast is something we're interested in. So maybe we trim a couple of Chrome Moxes in case our opponent is on that sort of thing. Is it another Preordain? I don't think we can go below 10 cantrips though. Maybe it's just boarding out of land. We've been doing that quite often and I haven't really missed them. I believe in the power of Ponder. Basic Island Ponder from our opponent. They also believe in the power of Ponder. I think I'd rather Ponder here than hold up the Pyroblast. But we can play a Lotus Petal if that's the thing we're interested in. So I think we put the Jeska's Will down, then the Brainstorm, and then we put the Force of Will into our hand. I'm going to sort of play this one a little bit defensively. Flusterstorm. And a Ponder from our opponent again. They did not shuffle. But they might just take 1 card and then shuffle the other 2. So this is Brainstorm that we knew about. We play out this Scalding Tarn, and we'll cast a Ponder. Right, this is a lot of mana, but it's not really mana that's the problem right now, is it? I think we go any order and shuffle. There we go. We could try and go this turn, but I don't think that's a wise move, and we can go next turn with Pyroblast, Force of Will backup. My opponent's got 2 islands, so it could be like Omnitel. I think getting the Thundering Falls here, just as a tiny little bit of additional selection. You never know what we could end up drawing here. Another Lotus Petal. Sure, that doesn't hurt. There's a Lotus Petal. There's a Lotus Petal. There's a Lotus Petal. Here's a Seething Song. Let's make some dragons. Still holding up Pyroblast and Force of Will. Surgical Extraction targeting Ponder. They're doing this before the Storm trigger resolves. That is very interesting, because this will give us an additional dragon. Although we've already have Lethal Dragon, so I guess it doesn't matter on that front. They just want to see if they can win a counter war here. I don't really want to counter any spells our opponent does unless it's Mindbreak Trap. Alright. We have Lethal Dragons. We have 2 pieces of interaction for our opponent. Let's see what we can do here. We're going to see something like an Intuition at end step. Cunning Wish. Well, this is one of those awkward ones where you kind of have to counterspell this. But it could still be bait. Because they might not need that to do anything. But they also, if they get that, then they can... If they don't need that to combo, that just gives them the Flusterstorm, and then we can't beat that anyway. A Brainstorm. Alright. That's a good sign for us. Alright. We got the match. We're cruising already. Nice quick league so far. We are 3-1. So going for the 4-1 record, not too shabby. Let's see if we can get it. Alright, we can keep this. It's got our payoff card. It's got a little bit of mana on the way and some cantrips to find us the rest. And we do have an emergency Daze in case our opponent does something spooky that we need to try and interact with. Urza Saga. Okay. And Urza Saga on turn 1 usually makes me think that we're going to die by the time it pops. Or on the turn it pops. I think this is a Ponder turn. Not expecting Wastelands, but 2 mana. This is an any order and shuffle for me. Force of Will. That's not too bad. That means this Daze that is unlikely to do anything is now a blue card that we can pitch. Next turn we can do a Brainstorm and then shuffle some things away. And hopefully the turn after we can just win the game. Or put some lethal damage on board. And then try and win the game. City of Traitors. Right, our opponent's just in on that Urza Saga life. It's a good place to be. Another Ponder. I think Brainstorm is fine. We already have a fetch land we're trying to get rid of. Okay. Let me get rid of these 2. Crack this. And this one has to be a Volcanic this time. Then we'll cast a Ponder because this sees 4 cards rather than... Oh, that's a load of rubbish too. Elemental Eruption. That's not the one we wanted. So the One Ring is a thing that we can play next turn if we find any land drop. And I think that's worth playing for sure. Maybe we're supposed to keep a land just so we can do that. Especially since our opponent isn't getting a Pithy Needle off of this one. Candelabra of Tornos. Okay, we're on some spice over here. This is the first time I've ever seen somebody get a Candelabra of Tornos out of a Urza Saga. Manifold Key. Right, 5 damage is certainly some amount of damage. 5 cards on our opponent's hand. One Ring. That's not the one we're looking for, is it? Alright, let's Preordain. Looking for something useful. Okay, so our plan is to try and survive with the One Ring and then make a whole bunch of elementals. We might not have a lot of time with our One Ring. Our Lotus Petal, this gives them 6 6s. And then if we counter the next thing, we go to 1. Alright, we have to counter the next artifact. We do have a problem, and that problem is Manifold Key giving their creature unblockable and following up turns. Saprazan Scary. I don't really know what our opponent's doing other than playing a bunch of artifacts. Could be some weird Hull Breacher deck. But the Candelabra of Tornos is an odd one. They're using this now just to untap and get some more mana. That's pretty cool. Copy Artifact. I can't allow this to resolve because then we lose the game. We're going to go to 1 here. So we need to make enough dragons and somehow not die to their Manifold Key. I'm not sure how this one works out for us. Pretty sure we're just dead here. Yep, that'll do. Okay, well at least our opponent didn't see what we're doing. They did see a Preordain, which is normally in the combo ballpark of things. But we've got some good options like Meltdown. Very interested in melting things right down. Echoing Truth. can certainly buy us some time against some guys as well. Pyroblast, I don't know how good the Pyroblast is going to be. Our opponent could be... I guess because they got the Saprotan Scary, it makes you think that these Pyroblasts are going to be useful. I'm not too into the Daze here. I think we can board out the Chrome Mox if we're boarding these in. We can board out a land. We've been doing that a lot anyway. Why am I boarding out Scalding Tarn? I want to board out one of these. And that gives us one more cut to find. And I guess it's probably this Preordain that we keep boarding out. There's an argument for playing something like a Force of Negation here as well. I guess we'll take a Force of Negation. I don't like the Flusterstorm because it looks like a lot of their big, scary permanents are going to be artifacts or Hull Breacher type things. And Flusterstorm doesn't interact with that too well. So the only thing Flusterstorm would really be doing would be protecting us on our combo turn. And Pyroblast can do that just as well for the most part. We're on the play. We don't have any way of digging for what we're looking for. So there's going to be a very defensive approach. But we're only looking for one thing. So we've got a bunch of cantrips as well. I think I'm going to keep this and play a sort of more control-y game with the tools we have. Now there is an argument as to whether or not we play this Lotus Petal, so we have access to Pyroblast. I think I do play the Lotus Petal out. Now if our opponent's trying to do Hull Breacher stuff, that is something that they might be able to do on turn 1. And I don't want to get stung by that. It's Island Cycle. We'll get ourselves a Thundering Falls. Get some selection going. This means we do have to burn our Lotus Petal if we want to cast a Pyroblast. The One Ring. That is a pretty powerful Magic the Gathering card. We can cast next turn. And we only have to use our Rite of Flame on it as well. I guess it costs us our Lotus Petal too. But I can live with that. We already have the Echoing Truth to deal with construct tokens. That's the thing we're worried about. This can get a Pithing Needle to name our One Ring, but we'll get a couple of turns doing stuff with it. So this shields down on the Pyroblast. But we need to try and win the game somehow. And the One Ring is not a bad way of going about that. Our opponent's forcing here. We'll force back. I pitch Transmute Artifact. Misdirection. Guess I wish I had that Pyroblast now. The reason we didn't go in with the Pyroblast is because our opponent has this One Ring. So we're only going to get 2 turns of One Ring activation anyway. I think it was worth fighting over. But I didn't want to burn the Seething Song, which is our route to making our actual win condition. But perhaps that was wrong. We're just supposed to put everything into the One Ring basket and see if we can get 2 turns of activating it. Ancient Tomb. Okay, we're just waiting for the dragon now. There is a construct token. The fact they're floating mana off of this rather than making a construct is a little bit scary. He's going to combo us out this turn. Manifold Key. This might be the exact same deck that Tony was on as well. It's got a lot of the same moving pieces. Right, so we're going to take a little bit of damage here. We've got some good draws available to us. Do I want to Brainstorm right now? I think so. Meltdown, you say? That's not too shabby, is it? We can put the Seething Song away. And then the Ancient Tomb is probably fine here. So we could Meltdown right now. Or we could leave it a turn. Because our opponent didn't really do anything. I don't mind taking 2 damage. I think we'll leave it a turn. See if we can sweep up anything else. A Lotus Petal. I'll take that. If they offer it. If we can get that one. We don't get to play around a Force of Will here though. Just melt it right down. Like they've already had 2 counter spells effectively. But they got a 3rd. Pitching a Phyrexian Metamorph. This looks like the Duel deck with a bunch of copy effects. So we're going to draw a fresh card now, I think. Is that right? No, it's the Seething Song we had earlier, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. So next turn we get to draw a fresh one. We can cast a Force of Will or a Pyroblast this turn. But we are in need of the dragon making machine. Saprotan Scary. Another 3 damage. We haven't got the most amount of time left, especially since we're sat on these Ancient Tombs. Misty Rainforest. Okay, this allows us to cast a Force of Will without tapping 2 Ancient Tombs. I'll take that. Need some dragons though. Grim Monolith. This puts their guy to a 4. I don't think we can win this game anymore. The Manifold Key is a problem. We need to draw a Meltdown. Right, they're untapping their Grim Monolith. Jeez, what is this? Coveted Jewel. We cannot allow this to resolve. We need to crack our fetch land first. Not a big fan of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this means we do not get to tap our Ancient Tomb anymore. If they have any artifact, we die here. Alright, we get one more turn. How do we beat this? We draw Meltdown. That's what it is. Or we draw the One Ring into Meltdown. That's not it. And that is us dead. So we finished with a 3-2 in the end. It was going so well, but we lost twice to the sort of artifact colorless Urza Saga style deck. That was... It felt like it was doing similar things to us, but had more engines going on. So they had better stuff they could do with the One Ring. They also had better backup plans, and they had a decent amount of counter magic. More so than we had, I would say. So what do I think of this deck? Let's talk about it. Honestly, I really like this one. I think Jeska's Will is obviously a pretty clunky card, and in the world of Namesticker Goblin we would not be running this, but that's not the world we're in anymore. Another sort of ritual effect would be nice. I'm not really sure what ritual effect we could play instead. Like Ironcrag Feet is 4 mana and takes you up to 7, but only lets you cast one more spell that turn. Obviously if the spell you're casting is Storm spell, that's fine, and you can fight over the ramp spell. So maybe we could try an Ironcrag Feet, but then you have to get to 4 mana instead of 3. But I think that's probably something that we could think about, but it is like 1 red, which might prove a little bit difficult with our 2 islands sometimes, as well as the Ancient Tomb. So maybe that isn't the way we want to go. But yeah, it feels like we need a slightly better ritual than this. But there isn't one that gives you this sort of jump in mana. But the deck performed very well. Sometimes we're a little bit sketchy on our blue count for Force of Will. But that's sort of the nature of these decks, really. And if you're using your Force of Will, maybe you don't need your cantrips at that point anyway. So you can happily burn them into the Force of Will. I will say, at least our blue cards to pitch to Force of Will are kind of disposable, right? It's not like we're a show and tell deck. So pitching our blue card is part of our combo. None of these cards are part of our combo, so they can all relatively freely be pitched to Force of Will. So that's all right. So that does kind of make up for the low count. 18 is fine, but when you're sideboarding, it gets a bit trickier. I think I would consider cutting a land from this deck, just straight up. Just get rid of one of these Misty Rainforests. Didn't really feel like we needed 19 lands in this deck. I think 18 was fine. And maybe that gets us another ritual. That's an option. Or I don't think we want anything like a Burning Wish. The protection from the One Ring definitely stumped us as well a couple of times. I don't think we're running something like Bone Crusher Giant. Like, it could be the thing we run instead of Lightning Bolt. Because what are we killing with Lightning Bolt? Collector Roof or Gadok Teague. Those are kind of the big ones. Nobody runs Peacekeeper these days, so that's not one. But that, again, that's one that gets picked up by Bone Crusher Giant. So maybe Bone Crusher Giant would be better than Lightning Bolt. I'm trying to think of what is the 3-drop we want. What is the thing we want to kill that Lightning Bolt kills that the Bone Crusher Giant doesn't? Let me just pull up Bone Crusher Giant for you. So this is Bone Crusher Giant. On the front side, you cast Stomp. So that's 2 mana. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Deals 2 damage to any target. So you can just fire this at anything. You can fire it yourself even, but it means that damage can't be prevented, so you can just sail right through the One Ring. So that might be an option against these One Ring decks. Might be worth considering. The downside, obviously, is 2 mana is a lot different to 1 mana on Lightning Bolt. And they do come up in different situations, but when we were using this to kill like a Gadok Teague, we had the mana to cast a Stomp anyway. So I would like to try that over the Lightning Bolt and see if that works out. It might not. It's also another creature that maybe we can beat down with, but again, that's not necessarily the most likely thing in the world. But if we're just trying to tread water for a bit and we got a weird hand, we can maybe kill something and then play the backside of this and sort of stonewall a lot of attacks for a few turns. So I don't hate that as an option for us. So maybe that is the way to fight the One Ring here. All right. I think I am done with this one today. I did like this deck. Like I said at the start, when I got to the Pro Tour for the first Modern Pro Tour, Blue-Red Storm was what I chose. I liked the way it worked. I liked having a bunch of cantrips and then having a thing. Instead of running Elemental Eruption, we had Empty the Warrens plus Bushwhacker Goblin to give them haste. And maybe giving haste to this would work, but that's another card, and I don't think this deck wants to be finding another card to do that with. Unless there's some kind of card that don't remember that cantrips and gives your creatures haste and is relatively cheap. If there is one of those, let me know. But otherwise, I don't think that's a thing we necessarily need here. We just make a bunch of dragons. This is going to keep us defended against a lot of things. Not against, like, you win the game buttons like Thassa's Oracle, but it's going to stop creatures beating you down for the turn, and then you just swing and win. So I am a fan of how this deck works. It looks really sweet to me. I think it probably needs a little bit of fine-tuning, but I'm probably not the best person in the world to fine-tune it because I'm not an expert with Blue-Red Storm. Like I said, when I played it before at a high-stakes tournament, that was a very long time ago now. Was that 15 years or something like that? Since maybe 13 years since Modern started. Whenever Modern started was when I last played Blue-Red Storm at a competitive tournament. So don't necessarily take all my advice as gospel. But I think we can definitely trim another land, that's for sure. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one. It was a fun one. We made a lot of dragons. We showcased a new card that I don't think I've played yet on the channel, which is what I've been trying to do. And it won't be long before playing Modern Horizons cards, so stay tuned for that one as well. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.